Welcome D20 players. Let's take a look at the 2024 D&D spells, or at least what's been revealed of them so far. I have on the left side of the screen the 2014 versions of all the spells, and on the right hand side of the screen I have a listing of every spell that showed up in the playtest documents, and the number after each spell is the playtest document that it was most recently in. So we did not get to see a lot of specifics of these spells, the actual wording for these spells, but we did get some hints at some changes. So Cure Wounds, which we had seen being 2d8 in the last version of the playtest, they seem to indicate it's going to do more healing. So hopefully that 2d8 is staying. Same for Healing Word, 2d4, Mass Cure Wounds, Mass Healing Word, all beefed up for their healing potential. Prayer of Healing, they confirmed, is 10 minutes to cast still. Also gets the benefit of a short rest, once per long rest. So that seems to be as it was, or at least close to as it was in the final version of the playtest. Some general overall stuff they talked about was that spells in the player's handbook will include a list of the classes that can cast the spell in the spell description. So in D&D Beyond, you had that. And we'd expect, like, if we look at, for example, Acid Splash, you'd have Sorcerer and Wizard listed in the player's handbook. You wouldn't have Artificer. The omission of Artificer does not mean Artificers can't cast it, but it is a legacy class that hasn't been done yet. So I don't think it's going to be in the player's handbook at all. They talked about the ritual tag will be moved to the casting time of an object or of a spell in the player's handbook. Right now it appears, I think, right by the School of Magic. They talked about standardizing the wording throughout the spells and trying to shrink the spells down so they didn't take up as many pages. And like an example of that will be the emanation area of effect that they've talked about. They've talked about some new component details, some flourishes about what might happen when spells fail being in the book. And of course, there's a lot of artwork, like the Tasha's Bubbling Cauldron artwork on the front cover or on the thumbnail for this video is an example of one. Several other, lots of other art, really, with a lot of the art having multiple spells covered in the art. So then we have some new spells that are talked about. So we have new named spells: Yolandi's Regal Presence, Jolarzi's Storm of Radiance, Tasha's Bubbling Cauldron, all named. Those are all Greyhawk individuals, by the way, so that's interesting. Although Jolarzi, I don't know the Circle of Eight's history and if Jolarzi was always in the Circle of Eight or if that's a new thing. I'll have to take a look and see if that's something new. They talked about what spells are included. This is from like any other source, Tasha's, Xanathar's, etc., and or added. So we got Dragon's Breath for Draconic Sorcerers. We got Elementalism for the Elemental Monk, but also just all the just general elemental cantrips that were developed are all rolled into this Elementalism cantrip. Ice Knife makes it, Mind Sliver, Mind Spike, Sorcerer's Burst, Starry Wisp, Steel Wind Strike for the Ranger. Summoning spells that appeared in Tasha's and other sources, those have all been added and potentially upgraded, or at least changed. Some that are confirmed are Constructs, Dragons, Undead, Beasts, Fae. Synaptic Static is there, Toll the Dead, Vitriolic Sphere, Word of Radiance. Then we have some updated spells. So one was Blade Ward. They didn't go into specifics on that. Chromatic Orb. Let's look at the existing Chromatic Orb. So they said the change to this spell is that now it can bounce. So it used to be an attack roll, and then you do damage, and if you miss, it's kind of a bummer. So I don't know if there's going to be a save, if there's going to be, if you hit, you can attack again. We'll see in the final version of the spell. Another spell that they said was updated was Cloud of Daggers. This spell could often be a bummer, for sure. It couldn't move. You put it in a spot, you fill the air with spinning daggers in a cube 5 feet on each side, centered on a point you choose within range. The creature takes a lot of damage when it enters the spell's area for the first time or starts its turn there. So it's basically a one attack thing. Now you can move it. So I imagine that moving might be a little bit like Moonbeam. Let's take a look at Moonbeam. They didn't show this, so I'm not positive this is how it'll work, but on each of your turns after you cast this spell, you can use an action to move the beam up to 60 feet in any direction. So when a creature enters the areas for the first time on its turn or starts its turn there. So in theory, now with Cloud of Daggers, you'll be able to do kind of damage over and over to targets. So that'll be a big buff on that spell. That's, I think, going to see a lot more use. It was almost never used that I could see in games. Of course, all the Conjure spells, we saw a lot of changes. Those ones came out in playtest number 8, it was. So you can look at those in playtest 8. But that was the first release of them, so I suspect there's going to be some significant changes there to those. We'll see when we get the Player's Handbook for sure. They did mention Flame Strike is buffed. Let's look at Flame Strike. I think Flame Strike was certainly underpowered for its level. This was a 5th level spell that did 8d6 damage. I mean, not good. Not a great range, not a lot of damage. 3rd level spell does almost as much or as much. Definitely need to be buffed. That's a good buff on that one for sure. Guards and Wards, I didn't even know if that was in the game. That's how rarely that ever got used. Guards and Wards. Yeah, there it is. So they talked about changes to that, although they didn't go into any detail about what they were. Then we have Guidance. So this is a big change to the spell as it was in 2014, even to all the playtests. I really liked how Guidance was being changed in the playtest to only trigger when you failed. So you knew if using it would matter, and you won't waste it. So previously, in 2014, you cast it on a creature, and this is a lot of things a lot of people didn't know. You didn't have to roll that d4. You chose to roll it after you rolled the d20 to see if you wanted to add that d4 to the d20. Otherwise, you still had your guidance going. Now what it is you're going to choose one skill, and then you're going to get a bonus for the duration of the spell. I don't know if the duration is still a minute, but that could be multiple skill checks that way. Big change. That's much different than the way it was before, and it kind of makes a little bit more sense. It's like, hey, you're guided on whatever you want to do. Now it's going to be guided on one specific task. That'll be interesting. Polymorph, shape change, true polymorph. No second pool of hit points for those spells. The thing about polymorph that I always hated was it wasn't very good as an offensive spell against a creature if that creature could be harmed anyway. Because you'd cast polymorph on a creature, and as soon as it drops to 0 hit points, it's not knocked unconscious. Instead, reverts as a result of the 0 hit points. So you change the creature to a slag, someone stomps on it, now they're back to their normal form. So that hopefully the offensive version of polymorph gets changed as well as the defensive version of polymorph. Produce flame. So Jeremy said in the video that it's, quote, way easier to cast. I don't know what that means because it's not like it was hard to cast before. Let's take a look. So Produce Flame was a spell that had a casting time of an action, and it was an action to hurl the flame. So you might think, oh, well, there's 2 actions, it takes 2 rounds. But right in the spell, when you cast this spell, or as an action on a later turn, you can hurl the flame. So 1 action, you hurl the flame, that's it. So, quote, make it that way easier to cast. I don't know if they maybe missed that being the spell or not. Hopefully not. We'll see what they do. We'll see what the final spell looks like. They say resistance is updated. That's good because resistance was hardly ever used. And then the last spell they talk about is the wish spell. They say there's some new default options for it, some new ramifications for using it and failing, and some caveats for example, trying to wish against Sigil or against the Lady of Pain. So that was it. Not a lot of detail in the spell preview. We did get some, hints of some things that are changing. Still very much interested in seeing this Player's Handbook. Still very much interested in seeing how bonus action spells work in the action economy. That was always a sticking point, always not known well by new or experienced players, and frankly, kind of annoying. So hopefully that's fixed. Hopefully we'll see some action economy stuff next time or next time soon. Let me know what you think of what you've heard so far in the spells. I will see you all next time.